But
Yeah.
vibrate higher, it's a vibe, man. So Robert, you have these Guru After Dark. You have a story to tell or two. You got a
I do,
couple, man.
man. I got a few, but look, this is the April edition, Guru Nation After Dark. So super pumped to be here,
We
Dan.
could
Thank
have been
you.
mean and gone April Fools on
We
people
could
and
have.
just like, scared people with some stuff, but no.
I mean,
Keep it.
it's 10 minutes to midnight on the East Coast. So any East Coast viewers out there, awesome. But yeah, real quick, I just wanted to give a big shout out and a big congratulations to one of the viewers of the first episodes of Guru Nation After Dark. Dan, you remember Kellen Battles? He was really active in one of our first episodes, and he was like asking a bunch of questions, super engaging. You remember him?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
do.
So, he reached out after the show, and, I met with him and gave him some pointers. We talked about his work history. And I just found out today he hit me up and he got a job. He landed a CRA2
Hell,
position.
congrats,
Yeah,
man,
man.
Kellen.
So,
we gotta do a drink for you, Kellen.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you for
Huge.
it's your persistence. Probably you helped him a lot, Robert. I know he like called you a few
Yeah.
times, so thank you for helping people out, man.
No, absolutely. But at the end of the day, look, I take very little credit. I do what I can to give back to the community always. That's part of my thing that I've done. I've mentored quite a few people from this podcast, and at the end of the day, he did the heavy lifting, right? He interviewed, he closed the deal, but it was just a way of presenting himself in the manner in which hiring managers probably want to see it. So I think that's an amazing positive note. Obviously we've been talking a lot about the job market. It's still tight. It's still challenging, but he landed a CRA2 role, and he had 3 years of experience working at a large CRO. Helped him fill in some knowledge gaps, and yeah, when he messaged me today, man, if it was, I felt I was very very happy for him. So
There you go.
yeah,
This stuff is positive. Like the Guru After Dark already indirectly or very directly helped somebody get land the job
yeah.
this
So it's
month,
huge.
which was amazing.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Yeah, we have another Guru After Dark regular viewer, Sylvester. He might be on. He just visited Yuma from Boston. He's a police officer in Springfield, Massachusetts, and he took our CRA Academy, done the internship. He came out to Yuma for 2 days, met the team. He did like 6 patient visits, or he
Wow.
shadowed 6 patient visits while he was here, and went back, got an interview with a site in Boston, and I set him up with one more, and he said the interview went really well, and he's waiting to hear back, but he's got another interview with another group too. So shout out to Sylvester. You see him here and there commenting, and I believe he was also on the Guru After Dark live stream as well. So
So
shout out to the hard workers that are up late, and not just job hunting, but curious about opportunities in the space, which is why the theme of vibrate higher resonates with me right now. There's a lot
so
of opportunities.
I gotta ask, Dan. So Sylvester thought being a CRA would be easier than being a cop. What's wrong with this man?
Yeah, he does. He loves being a cop, but he says it's very dangerous. And he's already been in several. Had a, he had at least one colleague that he was close with die on the job, and another one passed away as well, like in the line of duty. So, I mean, these are true first responders. Like dealing with the kind of pressure they deal with, like a database lock is laughable. I mean, you know, you got actual guns to your head, and you're in the middle of it with like shooters. One was like a mass shooter guy that ended up barricading himself in the house. He's been in some sticky situations. He talked about a guy with a machete on the street
Man.
on drugs, and he started like they have a protocol. They're not just allowed to shoot whenever you want to. Like you have to like use all your weapons, your taser, your baton. Your gun is like you should not pull it out really, even if a guy's swinging a machete at you. So he got him down with a taser and a baton.
Well,
But
something's wrong.
he's saying he wants to obviously he wants rather do research.
So,
And I think transferable skills are actually good.
I'm sure Robert will agree with this, but maybe not. Something's wrong with that police department. You got a machete. If you're within 20 feet, you can't get your gun out in time. You're dead.
The machete was clashing with the baton.
Yeah,
He
hell
said,
with that. It'd be clashing with lead if it were me.
"Yeah, well, you would not keep your job, man."
No, I mean,
But I would go home alive for sure.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, different jurisdictions. I speak from experience. I was a reserve police officer in Michigan.
Mhm.
So, typically the MCOLs, I don't mean Michigan's different, but MCOLs training, yeah, Chris would be right on. The guy would have, you know,
Oh yeah,
I almost said the
Arizona,
saying. I
Arizona
almost
too.
said the saying on the shirt, Chris. Before you break in my house, get right with who. Anyways, this is not that kind of show, Dan. I think we need to
Move
get
on.
into some juicy
But it just
clinical
shows you
research topic.
where everybody, the opportunities are here.
Yeah,
And yes, there are transferable skills, because when you talk about how do you work under pressure as I
absolutely.
mean, you're gonna nail that question with
Yeah.
Sylvester's line of work. So,
Except
Yeah.
when he gets a disgruntled patient that says, "What do you mean I can't enroll?" He can't
we
take his baton out and quiet him. I mean, that's the only problem.
right, and we did have one similar to that while he was there, and didn't get hostile, but it was getting like verbally kind of semi nasty. And
Aggravated.
yeah, he was unfortunately under substances of several different kinds.
I'm
But
sure he met eligibility, huh?
he should have been pre-screened, but he's just
Okay.
replied to the text, "I'm down." And then he comes, and yeah, he
He
still
was
got
down all
paid.
right, or he
He
was up.
was he was up, yeah.
Or sideways, one of the two.
Well, eventually sideways, guys. A lot of opportunities. Sites are getting acquired. See, like at the site levels where it's at, man, and the consulting level. When you have disruptions in the market, and no one can not say that COVID truly disrupted our industry, and for the better. But when you have the backlog of work maybe caught up to the demand, or the labor supply force, uh, you have CROs not hiring like they used to. You have sponsors not hiring like they used to. But you have consultants, you have sites still getting work. So there's still a need for our services. They may change their form. Like you may not need a remote site monitor anymore. You might need to be a consultant or something. So, um, what are you guys seeing on your end as far as opportunities right now? Because in every down market, there is always opportunity. You just have to know where to look.
So before Robert answers that, because I have no answer to that, are we officially in a down market? You said down in a down market.
A
Are we
lot of people are
officially in
saying
it?
it. From my vantage point, no, but from others, yes. So,
Yeah. I
that's
mean, you just got to, I mean, Chris, again, you're at a disadvantage from the perspective of you're not really active on LinkedIn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I would say 85% of the content is depressing in terms of people who are out of work, and not just out of work. I'm talking out of work for a year. I'll send you some messages after this show
All right.
just to kind of just to show you like what the pulse, the real state of the union is in terms of clinical research.
Okay.
And I think Dan has a perspective, and you have a perspective that's kind of,
jaded.
well, yeah, not jaded, but a nuanced view of, from the site level. But colleagues out there that are battling, and vendors, CROs, sponsors, small to large. I've talked to a lot of people recently of last week. A good friend of mine, I doubt he'll be watching this at this time because he lives in Texas and he's probably sleeping. But Gus, if you're watching, big shout out to you. 30 plus year veteran, executive level, C-suite, done everything in this industry. He's never seen anything quite like it. In his 30 plus years of being, high ranking in this industry. So again, I don't want to get somber and all that kind of stuff, but
So wait. So your friend is saying it's worse now than it was in 2008, 9, 10.
yeah.
It's all about where you are. Like if you're at a CRO that over leveraged,
I have a hard time believing that, because
so
I know.
if that were the case, though, wouldn't that be not just the industry, that would be nationwide? I mean,
but Chris, it's from
severe.
It's from his purview, right? Like he's been so far removed because he's an executive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's been so far removed from, let's say, a project director role, an executive director role, even arguably VP roles. Like he's been so far removed from that for so long because he's been at such a high level at various organizations that in order for him to replace the role that he would potentially be looking for or is really suitable for does not exist. So,
okay.
His view might be different. And then again, all you need to do is go on LinkedIn, type in director of clinical operations or associate director of operations, and put it in quotes so you filter out the nonsense.
So,
and you'll see, Chris, 100 to 1,000 applicants for every job. And
executive level.
No, Chris, an AD is not executive level.
No,
no, that's a mid senior level position.
Mid-level or higher is.
You will see 100 to 1,000 applicants for every available position.
Okay.
And I'm talking if the requisition is posted like 3-4 hours ago, within 1 hour of the job advertisement being posted, thanks to LinkedIn alerts, you will have 100 applicants within 1 hour, guaranteed.
Not to
now whether or not those are qualified applicants is one way or another. But the problem is for those who are qualified, you're lost in a sea of the unknown. I mean, it's just this crazy marketplace where, so I mean, it depends on the stakeholder you're talking to. And it really, but also I know firsthand that there's a lot of biotechs that are pausing future work. Like study was supposed to start Q3. Now it's maybe Q4 of 24. Now I just heard of a study that was postponed to Q2 of 25. And again, what the root cause of that is, it's multifactorial. Sometimes it's funding, sometimes it's regulatory issues, sometimes it's IP manufacturing and labeling, sometimes it's CMC work, sometimes it's non-clinical studies, human factor studies that have to be done to support the NDA. So there's a lot of delays in between that create these gaps, but there's a pause. And so when there's a pause, whether or not these organizations are privately held and publicly held, I think there's a lot of things going on, in my opinion, where these advertisements for jobs that are technically available may not really be available, and they're just being posted for strictly optics. Whether it's for, I mean, that's just, again, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist at all, but just based on my network and talking to people who are actively seeking, who have been unemployed for a year or more, who are insanely qualified to do jobs that they're getting rejected from. I mean, I have a friend who's 18 years in the industry. He's a director level position candidate, and he just got turned down for a CTM position, a PM position. Now, the other side of that coin is maybe the recruiter's looking at this and saying, this guy can't be possibly serious, but he's dead serious. He has a family to provide for. He wants a job. So even back to my friend Gus, who we were talking about, he's like, even at the CRO level, like you would think you can just walk into the CROs and get a PM job. It's not, he's like, I caution you, be careful. It's not as easy as it looks. So maybe the site isn't seeing it as much, or nearly at the same level. There could be a complete disconnect between the different people, but yeah, that's the state.
Some sites are.
That's the state of the affairs.
Some sites are. So Chris and I through our client services, we have like 80 some odd sites that we work with, and we see all ends of it. We see the brand new people starting out. We see the people that have been in business for 20 years going out of business. We see the people that have been in business for 5 years selling their sites for ridiculous multiples. I mean, we see sites turning down studies. We see sites not able to get studies. We're all over the place at the site level. And I think a lot of that has to do with the long tail distribution of specific individuals and how they choose to run their businesses. But
Yeah.
at the CRO, there's only like a handful of CROs, and they're the ones that employ what would you say, between sponsors and CROs from the workforce in our industry? It's at least half, if not 60 to 70% of the workforce
Yeah,
are
I
at the
agree.
CROs and the sponsors. So if they're the ones having a slowdown, it seems like the entire industry is slowing down, even though we may not see it that way.
Yeah.
But LinkedIn is seeing it that way, and
Are
I
they
am
seeing it at?
noticing.
Are they seeing it though at the lower levels, say CRA?
I
No,
mean, I think they are also to a degree. I mean,
they're
you
not
know, like
hiring like they were as CRAs, but they're
that's what I'm
not
saying.
laying them
Right.
off either. The good ones, they're not laying off.
Yeah.
Even the average ones, they're not laying off. They might be cutting the fat on like the ones that should have never been CRA in the first place. They got promoted too quickly. They made too
Mm.
many mistakes. Post COVID high, you
Okay,
know.
and what? And this is totally a guess, but why? Why do you think this is occurring? Is it economy? Is it they just overhired because of COVID? What is the reasoning?
Chris, honestly, like I think it's all of the above. I think it's economy, I think it's inflation, I think it's cost of living, I think it's the profit margins that are beholden to the shareholders. I don't think they can give the salaries that they gave during COVID. They were really giving big numbers and they just can't sustain that right now given the workload has decreased. So, 2 3 years ago you're talking, some PM roles were 160 to 180, director
Mhm.
level and higher you're talking 200 to 250, and I'm seeing some AD roles and director level roles at like 165 today. So I just think, not only was it, there's a lot of factors, but then again, it's like your money doesn't stretch as far as it used to. And now the salaries aren't as competitive as they used to because people are so desperate for jobs that they're willing to take a concession, whether that means a step backwards in their career in terms of title or even a pay cut just to get a job. When you have to put food on the table and take care of your family, it's a hard decision to make. And now the employers are in the driver's seat. Whereas 3 years ago, it was the candidates who were in the driver's seat. Like,
Right.
any of us could have switched to any organization we wanted
Hmm.
and quickly.
A few years
So
ago.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the economy as much. I think it's the correction from the post COVID gluttony. Uh, in many respects, the industry is doing what the government honestly should do, is cut back on spending. And I think that's what the industry is doing, but they are pushing their most important products forward. Like, that would explain why I'm seeing so many feasibilities. Like, Robert, I hate turning down studies
I hear
because
you.
I was around in '08 when the bottom fell out across the board, not
Yeah.
just sponsors and CROs, but sites too. I remember when my own CRAs would ask me for a job at my site, and I told them, "Yeah, we can't. We just lost a bunch of studies ourselves. Like, there's
Right.
there's nowhere to put you." So I have that in the back of my mind always when I turn down a study. But we're understaffed and we have way too many studies coming our way. So there is work. It's just not distributed, I think, evenly. And I think sponsors are also looking for different things now from sites. They're looking, not just studies are harder, everybody knows that. I actually think the diversity thing is a big deal. I think geography plays a big role. And I think having specialists is important. And I think sponsors can be a little pickier now, and not necessarily picky with PI research experience. I don't think that has changed much, but can you get patients? Like, where the rubber meets the road is, can you put patients in our study, and will you screw it up or not? And I think a lot of the sites that have been around that have gotten lazy are not able to give them the answers that they want, right? For
Yeah.
whatever reason. Maybe they're in a competitive market. Like, do we really need more sites in Miami? Well, depends, right? Like,
Yeah.
depends. Is it rare disease? I mean, maybe there's only a few doctors there that can do it. Is it some very special niche? Is it a specialty that like only a few have proven time and time again? So there is, like, it's always supply and demand, but I do think this diversity thing is, we're just starting to see it, and maybe that's why my site's benefiting from, um, as well as others, while there are others that are not, and going out of business too.
Yeah, I mean, Dan, look, I couldn't agree more with you. I think you know, again, not to say that, you know, I think you do great work, obviously, but your geographic location is very highly sought after, especially with the FDA guidance and initiatives on DEI and sponsors having to have a plan. You know, as soon as even the IND is filed, no later than the NDA, and even if not there, how are they going to achieve these metrics in phase 4 post-market surveillance? So that is a huge advantage. I'll give you an example. I had a guy reach out to me, Clearmont, Florida, which is west of Orlando, about 45 minutes. Okay, west of Orlando.
So like inland.
Inland, yeah, but you know, yeah, I mean inland, but you know, still not near the water, but you know, kind of whatever, 45 minutes west of Orlando, however you want to refer to it, right?
Rural and yeah.
In rural inland, like, yeah. I mean, he reached out to me, and obviously, I gave you know your and Chris's information. I don't know if he called you or not.
Thank you. Yeah, I think
Um,
Chris talked to him probably.
yeah, I think Chris did. But the point is, the premise of the conversation was, hey, I have a PI. I'm the director. I've been doing this for 2 years, and I haven't gotten a single study. And you know, I have 5,000 patients in my PI's database. It's a private practice. He's internal medicine, you know, and we started to dig around. And I'm just saying, I mean, here's a guy who can't find a single study, you know? So I think it's very, very geographically dominated. And again, what sponsor wants to even deal with, you know, go into Florida because it's so heavily, there's such a heavy presence in Florida. I mean, there's just thousands of sites, literally. I mean, especially Southern Florida,
Yeah.
right?
But it's not just geography. I talked to them yesterday. Chris talked to them today. We're not gonna mention who they are, but there's a sponsor out there super desperate for sites.
Yep.
Very good budget, very good study drug. My PI loves this drug. I was gonna turn it down. He's like, "No, no, I'll take it. If the psychiatrist doesn't want it, I'll do it." And but the sites are not built to accommodate the needs of this particular psych study, because psych studies are a different animal.
Yep. A lot of
Like,
raters and
a lot of rate, yeah, exactly, psychometric rating scale. But you can get the study. They'll accept just about any PI if you can prove you can get the patients, but do you have the infrastructure in place? Do you have a rater? Do you have a coordinator that knows
It's
psych?
usually it's usually not just one, it's usually 2
Oh,
raters
yeah, exactly. Multiple
that
raters.
that
So
meet the qualifications.
the
yeah.
sites that go out of their way to do this, like, hey, maybe I see a hot spot in psych. Maybe you should go, like, find PhD level, master's degree level people to bring up at your site to prepare for this. Or osteoarthritis was hot like a year ago. I seen it slow down a little bit. We had another study that was supposed to get started in the summer. I think that one's one of the ones that's delayed. I think you know which one that is,
Yep.
Robert. But
Yep. Yep.
um, like, do you have the X-ray and MRI vendors in place? Ophthalmology is another one. Like, a lot of these studies require eye exams. Do you have the eye center that has certain equipment that the sponsors are looking for? A lot of sites don't go that far, right? They just say, okay, we have patients, we have a PI. You need to go a little bit further, meaning you gotta be somewhat connected in your area, so when a sponsor asks for a random thing, you have a better chance of saying yes than a competitor. And it's not an easy thing to do. I think you have to be
No.
well connected. This is where networking comes into play, and this is where you've got to never stop networking, really. And I think a lot of sites gotten in trouble with not doing that.
Yeah,
And
no, I agree with you.
hopefully Chris talked to this guy, but what about the consulting? People are doing this now. People are turning, especially the experienced people, are
Yeah,
turning to consulting. They're entering the world of being business owners. Not everyone's built for that, but the ones that are and end up succeeding say, why didn't I do this earlier? Like, it's necessity is the mother of innovation. I don't know who said that, but it's a great quote.
look, Dan, I got to give you all the credit in the world. You pushed me, to go out and start consulting. That was, a few years ago.
Your brain is
And
like one of one, man. Like, how
yeah,
many people have that background? You're a doctor, you're an MD, right? You have been at CROs, you've been running studies, like the entire study at the sponsor level too. You know way more than you should about pathways and
a lot of things. Yeah.
approval.
Yeah.
Way too. And now messing around with people like me and Chris, you know way more than you should about sites.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I did venture out and, yeah, it's been an amazing response, so far. And I feel like, you're right. I mean, I now ask myself, why did I not do this much earlier?
Why? Because it was
Um,
too easy to stay where you are, right?
yeah, it is. It's just you get comfortable. We're creatures of habit. We don't want to, move
Good to great. You
and
ever read
change.
the book Good to Great?
No,
Do you know what the enemy of great is?
tell me
Ev-
yourself.
Everyone says it's bad. The enemy of great is good enough.
Good enough. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Not my
Yeah.
idea, but I'll
No, I
roll
mean,
with it.
no, I mean, no, it's a true statement. It's a
Yeah,
true statement. The enemy of great.
facts.
Yeah,
The enemy of
yeah,
great's good enough, even for sites. I think
yeah.
this explains why some sites go out of business while other ones are hot. A lot of it's luck, like, oh, you're in the right place, you're in Yuma. Okay, there's no other site there, cool. But we've built it to the point where we can say yes to more studies than I think the average site because the specialists we partner with and the vendors. And not every site is able to do that. A lot of it's because, hey, things have been good enough for a while. We don't need to adapt. We don't need to change. If you're not changing, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. That's my strategy. That's why I don't like it when a business gets to the point where you just bring in managers and just maintain status quo. I don't like that.
Did
That's where
Yeah.
you?
I bow out.
I can't remember the name of the book now, but did you finish that book, Dan, that I recommended? What?
Yeah, the $100 million offers.
Yeah. So in the book,
Yeah,
it states
Chris,
if you're not
please talk about this. Yes,
if you're not increasing business by 9% a year, you're failing. So if your business isn't improving by 9% a year in
by
terms
at
of
least 9.
by at least 9 in revenue, you're failing because you're not maintaining or competing. How does he put it? I drank a
With
little bit, but
inflation,
inflation, yeah,
inflation and the market. Inflation and the market. So the downward pressure of inflation and the upward pressure of I could do nothing and put my money, like everything I earned last year, put it into the SPY. So if I'm not at least growing by that and inflation, why am I in business? Like, why am I getting stress and hypertension over random CRA request when I could just do nothing, right? And put it in SPY. So,
yep.
yeah, if you're not growing, you're dying. That $100 million offer book has a lot of good advice. What's one that you, Chris, you got to share this one, man. This is like a revolutionary thing that you told me. It's like the to me the most important thing in the book, but the big thing that you told me.
Dude, you're asking me at the wrong time. You're testing my memory, and I've been drinking, so yeah, forget about it.
You got to have one premium offer,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
ultra premium. This is for Robert cuz he's consultant now. You have like you know how you have your benchmark. This is what's fair. I don't want to embarrass myself by asking for too much. Okay, so you have those clients. That's like your standard. That's like your base, right? This is your range. But you should have one or two clients every year. That's
Mm-hmm.
your ultra premium, ultra VIP, and it should be your salary as their fee. And you got to figure out
For the
what they
year.
want
For the
for a
year.
year, for the year. So if you're
Wow.
making 300K a year, you should have one $300,000 client. That's your ultra VIP in your back pocket. They have access to you 24/7. I don't know what you're going to offer them.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to make them an offer that's so good they can't say no, even at that price. Because
They
there
Yeah.
would
are
feel foolish saying no.
1% of the market doesn't care about money. 1% doesn't care. They have problems to solve worth more than that money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mind stretch because we put ourselves in boxes like, and then especially sites, fair market value, this and that.
Yep.
But no, when you do consulting,
Yeah, I mean,
you,
Dan, when when you and I were talking about my rates, because I'm like, hey, what should I? And when you told me the rate I should be charging, I was like mind blown. And you're right. I mean, it's exactly what you told me it is. And I mean, and I continue to provide very high quality deliverables, and
oh yeah,
um, and you're right. I mean, when you're solving problems and you're creating ROI, it turns out to be a minuscule amount of money in the grand scheme of what the mission of that particular client is.
hmm
By
So
the way,
I
sorry, Robert.
yeah,
Go ahead.
no. I was just saying
I,
that.
I was just going to give Dan props. Good explanation, Dan.
thank you.
Much better than I could do.
I only had one beer, so it's hasn't hit me yet.
I'm drinking the water.
Yeah, right now I got the liquid death, so this is just sparkling water.
That's good stuff. It's very, very
Yeah.
carbonated. I love it.
Hmm.
They were handing that out at the Metallica show.
Oh yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, for free. It was amazing. Yeah,
Hmm.
so I got to try it out.
see,
Get the
Yeah.
word out. Huh?
premium product. They're like, hey, we'll give these are
Do
expensive,
they
but
do they sponsor a Guru Nation After Dark, Dan? Because if not, they should.
you know, we should get. I know Vaynerchuk owns a piece of this, so maybe we'll reach out to him. Death to plastic is my favorite. The hashtag death to plastic.
I love
Plastic's
it.
so bad for you.
It really is. A lot of leaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very true.
Uh, so consulting, do you recommend it for everyone though? Because you've done it now. I mean, you've done it unofficially for a while, but
Yeah.
officially, this is the year you
Yeah, we just
start.
launched, publicly. It's like when I say publicly, I mean like it's public knowledge now that, we have Alcoa Consulting. Clever name. Obviously within our industry, you should know what Alcoa stands for. If not, I mean, Dan, you did a video on that, right?
Yeah,
So I mean, it's it depends on the personality. I mean, it's not for everybody because some of my clients will contact me 9, 10 o'clock at night. They're entrepreneurs, they're startup companies in some cases, and these Y Combinator backed companies are
there's a lot of them.
fueled with very hungry, ambitious co-founders and founders and CEOs, and you kind of have to be available. So I find myself working very late. I find myself working a lot, but the caveat to that is I'm exposing myself to so much that I would never have exposure to. So from tech companies that are building, AI models, to sponsor companies that are first in market to solve a problem that has not been able to be addressed yet. Particularly like, for example, I'm not going to say who the company is, but in the men's health space, right? We rarely hear about men's health. So there's other companies I'm working with in the rare disease space. Just had a call today with a company who's looking to do generative AI in terms of building trainings off of a ingestion of a protocol to make it very easy for CRAs and project management staff and the whole clinical operations team,
Hmm.
not only at the CRO level but the site level, to get palatable easy to interpret training, right?
What do you
And they
think about
actually,
that? The training is that's a spectrum right there.
yeah,
I had one study recently. I thought they did a decent job of making it interesting. They had like a teachable style thing where there were videos and you go through it and they try to give you case studies. It was more palatable than reading slides on your own, or even worse, like watching your CRA do it. Uh, there's got to be more innovation there because like teaching people a study is not easy, and no one
yeah,
wants to do it.
that's the challenge. And like I was mentioning, I think a lot of the training, starts from a template because there's there's no reason to rewrite the book on what adverse events are. I mean, it still boggles my mind, Dan, and you and Chris know this better than I do, but every SIV you have or PSSV, like, do they really need to go through what an adverse event is? Like, do they really need to go through what the PI obligations are? I mean,
Right.
if you're, it's like these redundant slides that are part of the template, if you will.
It's for liability in case the
I
PI
get
says,
it.
"Hey, you know what? No
I
one told me that."
Yeah, but Dan, you know what? It's the PI, his or her responsibility to understand what's on the back
Right.
of that 1572. So
Right.
if you can't rattle off at least 3 out of the 8 obligations on the back of that 1572, maybe you ought to just look at what you're signing, right? No different than us, than a novice person, signing a contract or negotiating a budget that has no business doing that task, right?
But just stating this.
Yeah.
So you sign contracts all the time that you don't read, and so does every American. So maybe the PIs look at it like that, right? It's
Well,
like
when they're
signing
when
it's like signing a contract with Verizon, right?
yeah, but Chris, I'm not losing my medical license from
Of
signing a
course,
contract
of
with
course,
Verizon.
but
Worst case scenario is I have a creditor coming after me, and they're
of
not going to
course,
sign me up again.
of course. But my point is a lot of times we all get into these ruts
Yeah,
where this is just the way it's done, right? You don't need
yeah,
to read it, just sign it. I mean, I'm
yeah.
just saying,
No,
I'm not a doctor, and I surely would probably take a little closer look at it than most doctors do. But I can guarantee you right now, I don't think I know a doctor that's read the 1572.
Here's the
well,
thing.
Literally.
yeah.
Here's the bigger
Good
thing.
thing I'm not your monitor, buddy.
Here's the real where that like House of Cards starts to appear. Okay, this is after dark. The amount like PIs don't even know the protocol well for most studies.
Yeah,
It's the coordinators and the
yeah.
monitors, right? You
Nor
hope.
do they really need to, though. Like I
True,
get it. I
true.
get it.
But they're the ones that are supposed to make wartime decisions. Should this patient be in? Should they not? RPI Smith asked me for cheat sheets for the labs for one study because there's a lot of if this then that on the labs. So in my opinion, that's his job because that's like his call. But when it comes to something not lab related, it's really like the CRC making those calls.
I would
Yeah,
Um,
I would even take it a step further than that, Dan. I mean, you're kind of cutting the PI some slack, but in all reality, they're responsible for every move in the study,
every
right? I mean,
aspect. That's what the
it boils down
1572
to them,
says.
right? The PI, anybody working on behalf of delegated duties on behalf by the
Mhm.
PI on behalf of the PI, it's still effectively the PI that's
Right,
performing that duty.
right.
So again, back to what you said, Robert, they should absolutely 100%, 110% take a very active role in understanding every aspect of research. But again, I just think we've been conditioned in such a way that a lot of people, it's just modus operandi, right? They just sign them.
yeah.
I think what the industry expects is not that the PIs are experts on their protocol. The industry expects they keep patients safe, and when their coordinators are screwing up, that they take action to get either new coordinators or get them trained, which means bring in a site director, bring in a consultant, train the staff, make sure, hey, we can't have this going on. You're supposed to be the expert on the protocol. Why is this monitor saying that we're an outlier now as a site, right? Like we can't be an outlier.
Yeah, I mean the buck stops ultimately with the PI. period. I mean, because if there's ever going to be a repercussion, you know, and I'm talking much more than just financial implications. I'm talking, you know, audit implications. It's going to go to the FDA, to the PI. I mean, it's period. It's that simple. It's not, you know, I've read 483 warning letters and 43 letters that oh well, the CRA said this and the sponsor said that and the CRO said this. It's like they didn't listen to any of it. They were like, well, we acknowledge, very common response by the agency. We acknowledge your response, however. And that's where they tear into them. It's like, it is your responsibility to do this. It is your responsibility for that. You continue to do this against protocol eligibility. You know, you were supposed to use the left arm consistently. You chose to use the right arm. You were supposed to use the abdomen. You used the leg. Like, it's a, well, the sponsor said I could. It doesn't matter what the sponsor said you could. You can't deviate from the protocol unless it's in the best interest of the safety and welfare of protecting the patient.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, again, it's all about documentation. It's about communication. And that's where the PIs need to really have an understanding, because, you know, who they're working with can really make or break, you know, their problem. Nobody wants a 483. And 483s are a lot of headache. You know, I had a conversation with an attorney, one of our friends, Dan, not going to mention his name right now for various reasons, but you know, he emailed me and asked me a question from a sponsor perspective, and it was simply like, does a 483 harm or impact your decision on selecting a site from a sponsor perspective? And of course, well, you know, my answer was always, it depends. And I wrote quite a novel of a response, and he said that it was very insightful and very helpful. But I think what it boils down to is, yeah, I mean, it from, you know, the optics of a 483 are not good, but I break it down to, well, what was the purpose of the 483? What was, you know, why did they get it? What did they do? How did they fix it? How prevalent was the issue? And then, you know, even if there is a 483, then there's cases where sponsors have worked with these sites before in the past. They know what their capabilities are, and they're still going to go with that PI regardless if there's a 483.
So
but on the other, yeah, sure, absolutely. But on the other side of the token, I mean, given that it's been resolved and everything is fully addressed, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of the token is, like I mentioned in my email back to him, I said, well, you know, there's so many sites out there. Why would I want to work with a site that has a 483 when I can go to the next site that doesn't have a 483? You know, I don't want to raise any red flags. So, you know, I think the take home message is, unless you have an established pipeline of repeat business and you've been demonstrating success time and time again, meeting your feasibility estimates, and you have high level of sponsor satisfaction, and you happen to get a 483 on an unrelated trial, that's not going to impact your ability to continue to get work from that other sponsor I just described. But if you're a new site and you hire a PI that has a 483 on his or her record, and you're unaware of it, and then when you come to PSSV site selection visit and you are asked, have you received any 483s? And you know, you as a site have not, but the PI has, and you answer that question no, only to come to find out when the CRO does the debarment check, oh, like, you know, you're completely have no shot now. You're done.
I got a question right there. I got a question. So did you say debarment check?
Yeah. That's what
so is there a website, or how do they do this check?
Yeah. You just simply go to the state of where the PI resides. You go to the medical licensing board website, you type in the PI's name, and you can look for disciplinary action.
So
we've had a PI that we had a site
that applied to licensing. That applies to 483s as well. Will show up.
Yeah. Sometimes they can.
But
Chris, I mean, a 483 doesn't mean that their license is taken away.
No, I know that.
Disciplinary action, right?
Of course. But
so
matter of fact, usually as a PI, you receive no repercussions from the licensing agency of your state.
Correct.
Due to research. But that's why it surprises me that you can find this information at the licensing department. That's all.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can find that the PI received a 483, but what you can find is that, you know, if the FDA decided to take disciplinary action against that provider, you know, then that obviously has to go through the medical licensing board. and then you may see a disciplinary action. And as you dig a little bit deeper, you may put the pieces of the puzzle together to realize that it was research based versus clinical practice based.
Mm.
I've actually seen that before as a startup lead when I was at one of the large CROs working in that capacity. So the point I'm trying to say here is that 483s are not good, and they do potentially impact your ability to continue to grow the business.
Here they are.
Yeah.
483 database. This one, they keep it active. So sorry if you're watching, but Jean Elise Sedeno, Southeast, August 8th. And you could download the whole thing to see what they actually 7 pages, first observation. You can buy this 483. So if you're a sponsor, you probably have login. You can log in and check like what actually happened. You can find the details.
Right. So I
Uh,
mean, just I think a site take home message is, many PIs don't own the sites that they work with. Some do, some don't. And a lot of PIs are just employees of the sites. So, from a site owner perspective, I think it's a good idea to check that type of a website,
So
man.
it's funny that we've gone into this because
I don't even
literally,
know how we got here. This is an after dark episode.
sure, but why? This is very coincidental because I had a client call yesterday, and this was the scenario they described to me. Hey, I've been working with this PI for 2 years now, and I've always said on feasibility questionnaires and at site selection visits that they have no 483, and it's never been an issue. And I just found out that 3 years ago they had a 483. And it took a number of studies of working with this PI at this site for this to come up, where a sponsor finally said, but you answered no, but this PI actually does have a 483. So that's why I'm curious how, because I guess many sponsors are not doing their due diligence because they weren't questioning the no to a 483 and awarding a study. This client also asked, hey, is this going to cause a problem for future studies? And I said, most likely, yes, but it does depend specifically on what the 483 is for. They sent it to me. I've yet to read it, but that's homework for the weekend.
Gotcha.
So
that'd be interesting reading.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you gave very good advice, but it's now that this person knows, they have no choice but to say yes to that feasibility portion, and
Yep.
then and I don't know, Chris, if it's like necessarily like a sponsor issue. I think it's a collaborative issue between the sponsor and the CRO as you establish your site selection list. It's I think there's an onus on both parties to collaboratively come up with a process to ensure that the feasibility matches what the PI says, especially in that regard, because there is an inherent risk of working with a PI who has been issued a 483 in the past. Not to say that they're going to repeat those behaviors, most likely
Sure.
they won't.
Mhm.
But, again, if you're a small biotech like I work for, you're very risk averse. Like you don't want
Certainly.
to even take the chance, and not even a small. I mean, even mid-size and sometimes large. Like you don't want that PI's name on your published list of investigators because patients are savvy too. They're going to
Certainly.
look up reviews. They're going to look up this. They're going to look up that. They
Well,
might be watching these podcasts, and they might even look for their own information. And
We've had
483s are
patients.
public. They're
We've had
40.
patients watch.
Yeah.
well,
And
not only
they're
that,
public knowledge. It's not anything you can really hide.
but I assume the FDA would take a really harsh stance on if the sponsor said, okay, we'll go ahead. We're aware of the 483 work with this PI, and then the same incidents occurred. I'm sure the FDA would not look too kindly on that. Hey, we told you to be aware of this by the issue of a 483, Mr. Sponsor or Miss Sponsor. And here they are doing it again, and you didn't have the foresight of being aware of this and watching out for it. I just think that would be disastrous for a sponsor, personally.
No, you're absolutely right. It would be. It
For
would be.
sponsor, yeah, and sponsors seem to get sponsors are the ones that have more to lose, I think, than the site. Like a lot of sites are not even owned by the PI. If that were me, Chris, the PI, I'd renegotiate my deal at best with them. I'd drop them at worst, which actually might be the more intelligent thing
I was
to
gonna
do.
say, Dan, I'm surprised you wouldn't even just drop them altogether because I mean,
Well, if he
you
lied
know,
to me, but if he
well,
didn't realize, that he
well,
got
Dan,
one,
Dan,
that's
there's
kind of.
no PI doesn't realize they got a 483.
I don't know. Maybe.
The first thing they're doing is they're hiring a lawyer. There's no way a
Wow.
PII doesn't know that they got a 483 because it's an extensive process. They have X amount of time to
Yeah.
respond to it. They have to do a coherent and cohesive response.
Yeah.
It typically almost always involves legal counsel. And
Yeah.
then sometimes if the response is inadequate, they have to provide CAPAs.
The
They have to
lying
provide,
part is what for me
yeah.
the deal breaker. If
So there's
if
no way that they're not aware. I mean, that's crazy to me.
if there was no lying, I just found out.
Forgot to tell you.
Yeah, or I found
Slipped
out.
my mind.
Right, or I found out like, hey, it was my bad. Like, I never asked him, and then he said, yeah, like when I give him the first feasibility, and he says, oh yeah, I do. I would be like, all right, let's try to get this study, but I think we're gonna not apply for you anymore for other studies because I
Right.
just think you're wasting time. I mean, I know you just said that sponsors will reconsider, but I wouldn't waste my time with it, honestly.
Well, honestly, this is what I would envision in terms of a PI with a 483. It'd be comparable of working with a research naive physician. That's your likelihood of getting a study. I would
No.
imagine. No, I would because you have trial experience as a PI. So there are already position sponsors not to work with research naive physicians. The only time they will is when they can't get physicians with experience to do this trial, right?
No,
So
highly disagree.
okay.
I agree.
Highly,
I don't agree with you on this one, Chris.
Well, okay. So you think a
highly.
sponsor would much rather or prefer to work with a research naive
Check this out.
physician
Check this
versus
out.
a 483
Yes,
of
check
some
this
sort
out.
of mild type
Here's why.
situation?
It
Here's why.
depends.
Here's why. Every
It
site owner
depends.
has a buddy. Here's why. Every site owner has a buddy that owns a site too. Hey Chris. Hey man. I got a new PI. You got a study that I could put him as a sub I for? All right. Cool. Thanks. Boom. I got experience. 483 doesn't go away.
That experience doesn't
483
help
doesn't.
much.
It
Yeah,
helps to get the first study, and then that's it.
Dan,
483 doesn't go away.
another angle, it doesn't go away. However, if I have a PI who's been doing research for 30 years, they've done 250 plus trials, and they have one 483 that was issued in 1998. Seriously, I've had this before. This is a real story.
Yeah.
Like, do I give a flying hoot in 1998? They've done 180 trials since with no issues. And once you get a 43, you're on the radar. You're going to get audited again. So my point is, I think that, it again, you have to look at the global dynamic of when it was
Yeah.
issued, how many studies have they been part of? And then Chris, to your point, in that scenario I just described, like here's a PI today that has done over 300 trials. Yes, they have a 483 26 years ago. You think I'm going to care about that 483 and rather work with a research naive physician over this particular physician? No, sir.
Right.
I'm going 483 all day long. Bring it in, baby.
As a sponsor, sure, you're gonna take precaution.
Yeah.
Audit as a site owner, I don't know. I'm taking that.
And that 483 PI is more likely to be on their best behavior to avoid having to go through that experience ever again because it's not pleasant.
You would hope.
You would hope. Exactly. So, anyways, I don't even know how we got to this this discussion.
That's a good topic, man.
It's fun.
Only kind you can do after dark.
Yeah, exactly.
We had a lot of X viewers, 45 right now on X, and 18 on LinkedIn. So not bad for like post midnight. It's almost 1 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, but Dan, at one point, I think we were as high as 30 on LinkedIn, so that's pretty solid.
Yeah. Well, look, Alicia Moore's on Facebook watching Hot Topic.
Yeah, Hot Topic.
I'm team research naive, not team 483. I'm sorry. If I'm a sponsor, that's different. If I'm
even in the scenario that I just gave you,
yeah. If I'm a sponsor, it's different.
Okay.
If I'm a site owner, I ain't touching that. You know,
So-
I don't
so
want
you-
another audit. You just said you're more likely to get
Yeah,
audited.
you're
What
not
the
wrong.
hell
I-
do I want that for?
I actually agree with both of you. So as a site owner, because you know you're bringing on talent, right? You're not working up with washed up talent, right? You're not working with that veteran has
You're
been.
bringing on a FDA magnet too.
No. I'm talking about the research naive position,
Ah,
right?
okay.
You're building talent, right? You're bringing
Sure.
on talent. You're
Yeah.
developing talent, opposed to a veteran that's probably at the end of the road. Why do I want to run into roadblocks? I don't need to develop this person. I'll just find somebody that's research naive and invest in that.
And one where you're almost guaranteed the FDA is going to audit you at some point.
So I can agree with both of you. I mean, I absolutely agree with Robert as well, and that was not entirely my point, but it's nice to hear it because it adds on to my point. But
yeah,
sponsors already know one of their sites or two, every study is going to get audited, right? More or less.
all day.
Site, you're like, oh no, I'm going to try to go as long as I can without a FDA audit. So it's just, it's the end of this video is the same as the beginning where we talk about the job market. It depends where you sit. That's all
Yep.
it boils down to. It
That's
depends
what it
where you
boils down
sit.
to. And you got to vibrate much higher.
Vibrate higher, guys. We're going to get going. We're going to leave you guys with the Vibrate Higher song.